What's up, heathens? How ya doing?
What in the fuck? Why is Godless Engineer doing my intro today?
Thank you, Team Skeptic, for allowing me to assist you today with this video. I'm so excited to see what Jism has for us.
Phrasing, Godless Engineer. Phrasing. Alright, so quick shout out to my patrons and channel members who help me continue to do what I love. Don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe if you haven't already, and click that little dinger to stay notified of new content. So let's begin.
What's going on, everyone? It's Jaren from Jeranism back with another video for you today. Nar-holes, image coming soon. Now, of course, you guys have heard of black holes. This week, in fact, we were blessed with the very first real image of a black hole. Take a look. Simply amazing scientific achievement.
Well, it really is amazing, Jism, and it's a shame that you and other conspiratard space-denying flat earth idiots are so quick to dismiss this human achievement. The amount of work and data that had to be collected and processed alone was ridiculously humongous, to the point that the data as a whole was faster to fly from one point to the other than to send it digitally over the internet.
And what a groundbreaking achievement it was. In an article at the Indian Express, one scientist put this photo into perspective by telling us that the history of science will be divided from the time before and after the image of the black hole. So I guess April 10th, 2019 will now be the zero date. Everything before that will be considered BBH, and everything after that will be ABH. Of course, before black hole and after black hole.
I can see what you're doing here, Jeranism, and you're looking like an idiot. By assigning a marker in time to an event, we have an easily understandable way of chronologically dating other events around, before, and after that time. For instance, we use CE and BCE as time markers for us to easily talk about the events of the modern times. Let's say that the date is 2000 CE. Well, 2000 CE is just a date stamp describing a length of time away from a certain event, which makes speaking of other events at different times more sensible. If I write in 2000 CE about an event that happened in 10 CE without the date marker representing the split of BCE to CE, then I have no reference point to compare the dates to. So if a person 50 years in the future reads my writings, he must know the date difference between he and I before he can calculate the length of time between him and the event. So yes, you can actually use this event as a date marker in our history, and if we so choose to mark the events in the future as BBH and ABH, then it will be an accurate way to date the mythological birth of NASCAR baby Jesus to the actual first observations of a black hole.
Now, of course, it is impossible to take a photo of a black hole. This much should be clear. We see here in this article by astronomy.com and the title, "The Event Horizon Telescope May Soon Release First Ever Black Hole Image." And then they have this link on the right here that says, "Event Horizon Telescope Releases First Image of a Black Hole." But in the opening line of the article, it states quite plainly, no, you can't actually take a picture of a black hole. And so, obviously, taking a photo of something invisible is impossible, since it is impossible to see.
Right, Jism, because due to the space-time geometry, no object, including light, can escape the curvature of space-time inside of the event horizon. So taking a picture of an actual black hole singularity, or anything within the event horizon, is physically impossible from outside of the event horizon. But we can use observations from outside the black hole around the event horizon to determine properties of the black hole that we are observing. It's very similar to not being able to see the curve away from us at the surface of the Earth. However, we have no problem seeing the effects of the curve as we watch boats sail over the horizon and disappear bottom first.
Next, let's listen to a scientist who is actually involved in the imaging, who tells us, well, there's nothing to actually photograph. It's black and cannot be seen.
Seen the image is actually light that is produced by plasma around the black hole. It's true that we cannot see the black hole. It's black, so we cannot see it.
Oh, Jism, you simple-minded idiot. True black is the absence of light. So the black hole itself is not reflecting light or emitting light that you can see, so it appears to be black. In fact, everything inside of an event horizon could be bright pink, and we on the outside of the event horizon would only ever see black. As far as the plasma surrounding the black hole, or that bright orange and yellow swirling around the black hole, well, that is very visible to observers outside of the event horizon. So while we can't see the black hole singularity itself, we can observe its effects on the space-time surrounding it.
And of course, they can provide an image, because the word image comes from the word imagination.
What the fuck? Seriously? I know that he's trying to do like a infantile play on words here by connecting image to imagination, but I mean, I'm not even going to go into the etymology of how that's wrong and how that's fallacious or whatnot, because I know that he's just being a child at this point, trying to sound clever, but he's just coming off as infantile. I mean, 8 radio telescopes were connected together and then simultaneously took a single picture of that one area of space and collected all the information and then produced an image of a black hole. I mean, if that's not awesome to you and you just pass that off as information, there's something fucking wrong with you.
What I want to discuss today is the latest in the many fantasies that people might conceptualize or imagine, and these are the highly debated nar-holes. I'm not sure if you've heard of them, but their utter importance is paramount in today's science, and as of yet, we haven't been able to see them.
Oh, great. This is still Jeranism being a petty little child about this entire subject. But, I mean, that's what Jism does best, right? I mean, he's going to try to make an analogy between the black hole and, like, Narnia or something, but the analogy just simply doesn't work. And, I mean, I know all analogies are flawed because we're not directly comparing the same things, but in this case, it is directly a false analogy fallacy because he's trying to compare, like, this mythical world of Narnia to reality. Jism, do everybody a favor, quit being a 5-year-old child.
Now, nar-holes were proven to exist when Sir Nathan Oakley theorized the concept and created the famous Oakley field equations, so their existence is fact, and the only thing left is to finally capture an image of one, which, after the Event Horizon Telescope findings, is now inevitable. Several scientists commented, one saying, "Science fiction has become science fact," and a professor of theoretical physics saying, "We have transformed a mathematical concept into a physical object." End quote.
Yeah, the fact that we've been able to actually capture an image of a black hole is pretty awesome. And yeah, science fiction predicted that we would eventually be able to see a black hole, if you will. But you see, that's a key component of science. It has predictability. And the fact that science fiction looks beyond the present to what could be in the future, it's no surprise that science fiction has predicted a number of things in the past.
Get this, we have now concocted a plan where we will have a setup, a network of 6 or 8 or even 10 telescopes, all set up in rooms across the Earth, all peering into the wardrobe simultaneously. By doing so, we have created a telescope the size of the Earth that will peer deeper and deeper into the wardrobe, past the local clusters, and into the furthest reaches of Narnia ever conceived.
This doesn't actually work like I was talking about before. His entire analogy here trying to show how fantastical looking out into space and at the black hole is by comparing it to the mythical place of Narnia is just a shitty analogy. How I mentioned that is directly visible here because he's talking about looking into closets to try to get a good picture of all of Narnia or whatever the fuck he's trying to do. But this is not comparable to radio telescopes looking at one particular part of space, capturing all of the data, and then distilling that data into an image. Those are not the same things. But then again, you have to understand that the key component to Jism and any other pseudoscientific peddler out there is that they have to misrepresent the actual situation. They have to be dishonest in order for their whatever the fuck to make sense.
Of course, this is conceptual right now, but with taxpayer funds spread across multiple countries combined, we anticipate that with only about $600 million, that by 2023, we can bring you an image of a nar-hole that far surpasses the image quality, depth, and understanding realized by the Event Horizon Telescope Network. Now, questions may arise, like what exactly is a nar-hole, and how does it work? Well, that's easy, but harder questions may follow, like how does this matter at all, and who cares? Or what difference does something make that is 330 quintillion miles away? Those are much more difficult to answer.
The problem I really have with this statement is that if Jism were doing actual real science instead of just mocking what he doesn't understand, he could probably get a real grant from somewhere. However, his science project would need to have some significance to the future of either scientific discovery or humanity. And since he didn't go to school to learn even the basic concepts discussed in this video, I highly doubt that there would be a dipshit willing to give this idiot any real money. The reason that studying black holes is actually important is that it helps us to confirm or deny Einstein's theory of general relativity, which does play a role in the way clocks tick on time-sensitive equipment orbiting Earth in space, and will have an impact on future space exploration.
How can we see something that allows no light to escape from it? Isn't this just a mathematical concept? How can a singularity exist in reality? Isn't that mathematics?
One dumbass question at a time, Jism. Yes, it is impossible to see something that doesn't reflect or emit light. But if that object distorts space-time enough, we can indirectly observe the object by how it affects other objects near it. Yes, a singularity is a mathematical concept, but it's backed by observational evidence, and the consequences that come with the concepts of general relativity, like gravitational time dilation, have been predicted, measured, and confirmed to an accuracy of over 1% of 1%. And as far as you stating that isn't the singularity just mathematics? Well, so was the planet Neptune for a while. Astronomers used observations of Uranus to determine that its orbital path was being influenced by another large planetary body further away than Uranus. When applying the mathematical calculations to the observed night sky, they found Neptune in its mathematically predicted spot. Jism, you would be doing yourself a big favor if you just set aside your desire to contradict the truth and actually took the time to learn the science and the math, because you are a fucking idiot.
Is the nar-hole a sphere, or is it a hole? If it's a hole in what? Easy answers for those who simply pay attention and read a physics book. Physics. Shouldn't all physics talk about physical things, or can they just be concepts?
Well, this concept is not as easy to explain as most people might think. Physics is the study of how the universe works. The problem with that statement is it's just too vague. So let's make it a much simpler and concise statement to understand. Physics is applied mathematics. I mean, we can all agree upon that, right? Well, okay, we haven't really defined what applied mathematics is. So all the concepts you learned in school growing up regarding math, like Pythagorean's theorem and how to calculate the surface area of a triangle and the volume of a sphere, are really just tools that you were given to help you predict reality. Let me give you an example. Let's say you have a boxed-in garden that is 1 meter long, 1 meter wide, and 10 centimeters tall, and we want to fill it with dirt. We can apply the laws of geometry we were taught in school, describing how to calculate the volume of a box to predict how much dirt we need to add to the box. We can then use algebra to determine how many bags of dirt you need to buy, and how much extra dirt you will have left over, and even how much money you need to bring to buy the dirt. This is applied mathematics, and applied mathematics is how we determine if our understanding of the universe around us is correct or not. If our understanding of gravity leads us to a certain mathematical prediction, given a set of variables, and we observe something that is completely different than what's predicted, then either an unknown force is at work, or our understanding of gravity needs to be reassessed. But without physics, we wouldn't even know if the observed outcomes are consistent with our predicted ones. You can deny it all you want, but math and physics are reality, and Jism is a fucking idiot.
Neil, tell us about our senses and how the Narnia-verse doesn't owe you a damn thing.
Yeah, that's so what you learn when you study science in general, but astrophysics especially, that you no longer invoke your senses to judge what makes sense, or you no longer invoke your personal philosophies to judge what should be true. The universe is what it is, and it really doesn't care about your senses. Yeah.
Yes, when it comes to the Narnia-verse, you no longer invoke your personal philosophies to judge what should be true.
Yeah, reality doesn't give a fuck about you or your senses. And yes, our senses are flawed. They can lead us to the wrong conclusion, and they have a lot of times in the past. But the scientific method attempts to counteract our flawed senses by requiring it to be repeatable and demonstratable. If it's not repeatable or demonstratable, then you don't have anything. It's just proof of your flawed senses or your flawed methodology. Now, Narnia isn't a real place as far as we know, but I invite Jism to stay in the closet for as long as he needs to in order to find it.
So let's learn a little bit about nar-holes, shall we? What exactly is a nar-hole? Well, according to Einstein's theory of general non-relativity, nar-holes are uninhabitable chasms of space-time that end in a singularity, or a mass of infinite density. It's a place so bleak that even the laws of physics break down there. The gravitational forces of them are so strong that nothing, neither matter nor light, can escape once it gets too close.
So right here, he's trying to show how silly black holes are, but, he's just failing miserably. Because, he's just showing how much of a silly bitch he is. To say that black holes don't exist, you would have to explain a lot of different observations that we've actually made recently, in human history at least. And Jism, you can't just use conspiratorial rhetoric. You can't use that in order to disprove black holes. You have to actually have evidence. But then again, shitty ass rhetoric is all Jism has.
Another question we get is, why has technology taken so long to achieve this first image? Well, if you recall, we discussed this. A single telescope on our measly little speck of dust is of course not powerful enough to peer that far into the wardrobe. But now technology has caught up with our imaginations. We can link our imagination tubes, better known as telescopes, together. By capturing radio waves from the nar-hole in separate imagination tubes, granted these are multi-million-dollar tubes, you can't afford one, but your taxes combined with those from other countries create the network. Once linked, this data is processed through computers, and when combined, we hope to very soon capture the very first image of a nar-hole.
Well, they aren't tubes for one. These radio telescopes are giant dishes that we've constructed all over the world. And he's just denying basic science at this point. But like I said before, say it with me, they have to be dishonest about our position in order for their position to make sense. This is nothing out of the realm of reality, whereas Narnia fucking is.
Someone else may ask, well, what can happen to planets which are near the nar-hole? Well, now come on guys, some of these questions have only theoretical answers, but what is likely is that you will be crushed by the gravity of the nar-hole. Well, then what would happen if a planet was to orbit the nar-hole, and it was far enough away to escape its gravitational pull? Well, it is expected that despite the size of the nar-hole, an orbiting planet is likely to circumnavigate it within a week, and that particular planet would be traveling at the speed of light.
Well, basically, you're full of shit. You see, one of the best traits of scientific theories is that you can predict what will actually happen in reality. Jism doesn't live in reality, so that's why he doesn't consider this fact of scientific theories.
And then the question on many an inquiring mind, what would happen to an individual who gets swallowed by a nar-hole? This is where the science becomes obvious. According to Einstein's nar-relativity, if a nar-hole swallows a person, their chances of survival are practically nil. They would first be torn apart by the nar-hole tidal forces, a process called spaghettiification. Don't laugh. This is real science. Spaghettiification, and if that's not scientific enough for you, it's also referred to as the noodle effect.
Yes, spaghettiification is a real thing, and yes, it is a rational thing to believe in black holes and infinite density and all that kind of stuff. Considering that he thinks that we all have personal domes that follow us around everywhere and trick us into thinking that the sun sets below the earth, you really gonna shit on spaghettiification? Also, I'd like to point out how their whole perspective deal where the things disappear over the horizon would require spaghettiification to happen like here on Earth, because how they're talking about the ships disappearing bottom first, and it being perspective, then the bottom part would have to be going like infinitely fast away from the person and disappear like immediately. Spaghettiification. So I don't know why this whole concept is surprising to you, but I doubt that you've actually considered the ramifications of your bullshit theories, well, hypotheses, ideas, conspiracies, however you want to label them. But they're definitely not theories.
You see, eventually the person will reach the gravitational singularity, where the gravitational field becomes infinitely strong. At this point, one will be crushed into an infinite density. Unfortunately for us, general narrativity provides no basis for working out what happens next. You see, when you reach the singularity in general narrativity, physics just stops. The equations break down.
So this statement is both true and not true at the same time. Classical mechanics does typically break down at the singularity, but that's just because the distances we need to measure are less than a Planck's unit of length. This presents problems for classical equations such as Newton's law of gravity, as these lengths would be considered zero in the equation for the radius. This leads to undefined results, not infinite ones. However, quantum mechanics steps in at that point and shows us that even though the classical mechanics of physics may fail, the quantum mechanics still work. The last major step, given our current understanding, is to find a unifying theory that describes the relationship between quantum mechanics and classical mechanics.
Unfortunately, those are the facts, ladies and gentlemen. But don't laugh at spaghettiification. It is not a laughing matter. It's real. It's science and it's fact. Here's the Wikipedia for spaghettiification. So you know it isn't fake. It's real. It's science and it is fact.
Spaghettification, as weird as it may sound, is an actual thing that was predicted to be a result of getting too close to a massive object and being stretched by the massive tidal forces that resulted in less gravity at the top of the object and much more gravity at the bottom of the object. Spaghettification will result anywhere near an object that has a large amount of mass, and just such a thing happened in July of 1992 when comet Shoemaker-Levy got too close to Jupiter, and Jupiter's massive gravitational forces acting on the comet ripped it apart and stretched it out like a noodle of spaghetti before the comet came crashing down to the surface of Jupiter. Jism. I learned about this in high school. You're a fucking idiot.
Now, I could go on, and I could read the Wikipedia for black holes and simply replace it with nar-holes to show the ridiculousness of both. But truly, both are ridiculous. Folks, black holes, like nar-holes, don't exist. Period. End of fantasy book. End of fairy tale. End of the fiction section of this imagination sector.
Jism, your argument from incredulity and lack of conceptualization is not impressive, nor is it evidence to suggest that black holes don't exist. And making a video where you essentially read the black hole Wikipedia page and replace black hole with nar-hole shows your lack of scientific knowledge, your lack of creativity, how little entertainment value you actually have, and how much of a fucking idiot you really are.
They exist in the mind of those who choose to believe in them. Now, I don't mean to go off on a rant here, but let's get serious. Who believes in this nonsense? Black holes and nar-holes are nothing but make-believe garbage, concocted in the minds of theoretical physicists and mathematicians whose sole purpose is to recruit you to their religious fantasies, whose basis is so far from reality it might as well describe Narnia, a place based in pure fantasy.
Right. This coming from the charlatan snake oil salesman who peddles for profit his fantasy version of the truth to the mentally deficient flat earth idiots of the world. I think I would rather believe the science coming from people who actually went to school to study these topics over Jism, who can't have the intellectual honesty to even address the argument. What's wrong, Jism? Is the science and math above the 3rd grade level and just too hard for you to understand? You're a fucking idiot.
So believe in Narnia. Go right ahead. Explain it to me in every way possible. Show me the equations involved and the math that proves it all. Teach me the process to get there, the mathematics involved, all of the brilliant formulas, and teach little boys to yell loudly.
Math is reality.
And some may actually believe it.
That's a solid use of Red's rhetoric right there. Because math is a description of our reality and what we have observed to happen in reality. So yes, math would be reality. I mean, I get that math is hard for you, considering that you couldn't even do the beam divergence math for your laser in the Behind the Curve documentary, because if you actually could do that kind of math and you actually did that math, you would have known that that laser trick wouldn't have actually worked with the distances that you were working with. But hey, you're living up to Jism status, aren't you?
You can explain exactly where the wardrobe is and what speed someone needs to be traveling to enter the wardrobe. Teach me all about the angles needed and the temperatures that might be encountered. Teach me about returning from said fantasy land and how my craft will need to be wrapped in an amazing gold foil to withstand the heat. Teach this nonsense to children too young to comprehend, but teach them anyway so that the fantasy can be embedded into their little brains and become part of their heavily protected belief system.
All right, now what you want to do is you want to get pretty far ways back from the closet, all right? And then you want to run at 88 miles per hour at the closet. And when you start getting a little close to it, what you want to do is you want to jump in the air, tuck your legs, stick a beer bottle up your ass and whip your dick out, and then you'll be able to get into Narnia. That's how you get into Narnia. You gotta get in there with a beer bottle up your ass and your dick waving in the air. Seriously though, you could really feel the hate that he has for the fact that kids are taught actual science. I mean, he hates basic scientific information. Have you ever found yourself hating basic scientific information? I mean, he hates it so much he wants to educationally stunt small children for life. Whew, that's a lot of hate. I don't know if I can live with that much hate in my life.
Show us all, photo upon photo, computer simulation after simulation, video upon video, put together by your science storytellers, and swear that they have to be real. Have fun and enjoy your belief in magical conceptions. Good old conceptions. Ideas, thoughts, theories, math, numbers, all of it conceptions. Teaching the world that 1 + 1 = 2, and so therefore the fabric of space-time, a concept in and of itself, must be true and real, because it's built upon the same math that says 1 + 1 = 2. So it must be proven science. Its equations say so. Complete and total nonsense.
Yes, that is nonsense, because that's not what actual scientific theories say whatsoever. See, we have multiple ways of proving that space-time exists, and I could go through and list all of the different ways that we know space-time to exist, but would that really have an effect on Jism here? What's more important is that he seems to link the mathematics, like basic math, to, oh, this means that space-time exists. But in actuality, when Einstein proposed this space-time concept, it was only born out of two postulates. The first one being that the laws of physics are invariant in all inertial reference frames. And the second one is that the speed of light in a vacuum is the same for all observers. Just using those two postulates, we have to conclude that space-time exists. That's what those two facts mean. Now, I don't know if maybe he's confusing this with 1 + 1 = 2, meaning that one postulate plus one postulate equals space-time. And I could see how we could get there. But you see, the fact that we have stated these two postulates as being true, it means like a whole lot of different things. And one of those things is that space-time exists.
How can science tell us the truth? Whose truth is it? The biased individuals doing the tests? What if they arrive at different conclusions? What if there are many opinions? You get to decide with what? Consensus?
Obviously, he doesn't understand what peer review is. I mean, did we really expect him to? You see, peer review removes this whole bias aspect to it. So it's not just one person doing one experiment and he sets the story or the narrative for that entire subject. And it's just that one person we have to accept his truth. Or we pick one experiment out there that, you know, sets the narrative for whatever. Like, that's not how science is actually done. But again, to harken back to what I said earlier, they have to be disingenuous about our position or about the science in general in order for their position to make sense. I mean, Jism, if you actually knew the scientific method, then you would know this. But I mean, you would rather continue being a dipshit about it, so...
Whoever has more believers means their version of the truth is true. Give me a frickin' break. I mean, do you accept the Einstein field theory that there is a fabric of space-time, a rigid, bendable fabric that is physical but consists of nothing other than mathematicians' concepts?
No, obviously not, because your representation of this topic is bullshit. I mean, you have to strawman every scientific theory and fact in order to make your cartoonish version of reality make sense. Space-time definitely does exist, but, you know, as you showed in the Behind the Curve documentary, you will post hoc make excuses for everything that disagrees with your particular narrative. You will come up with different ways to get around the cognitive dissonance that you suffer whenever you do an experiment and it disagrees with your position. And that's not how actual science is done. So you have to understand that it's hilarious to me whenever I hear you bitch and complain about these things, because you literally just pull shit out of your ass to make shit work.
Why would you believe in a black hole? Do you simply believe and trust in this conceptual mathematical idea because all the smartest men and women in the world can't be wrong?
Oh my god, what the fuck are you talking about? This consensus that you're talking about is just fucking reality because of how the scientific method works. It demands that scientific theories be repeatable and demonstratable and quantifiable and all of those other rigorous standards we put on it, so that we're not just basing this on one person's opinion or one person's bias. It has to be demonstratable and repeatable in multiple different venues in order for it to be accepted as reality. I mean, at this point, he's just basically like, are you gonna trust reality and shit? And it's like, yes, I am.
You see, the very reason they invoke these words is to confuse you to a point where you no longer feel comfortable challenging the truths that they have decided on. Using their conceptions and their formulas, the world sits back in awe today of the masterminds who used 8 telescopes combined to make a giant Earth-sized scope and have peered 330 quintillion miles to gather the first image of a black hole. Who could rival these, the greatest charlatans in the history of the world?
But you can, Jism! Just because we can answer your questions accurately, and we have all of the answers already, doesn't mean that we're the ones being disingenuous. It's not our problem. It is your problem for your model. Because where your model fails at, which is pretty much everywhere, the globe model has a direct answer for. And your excuse that it's just all a conspiracy to like indoctrinate us into whatever the fuck for whatever the fuck reason just isn't good enough scientifically to disprove anything that we have. And that's the bottom line of Jism.
You and I are not allowed to even question the 330 quadrillion mile observation until we too have raped taxpayers to fund a ridiculous telescope that does nothing but paint pictures, tell stories, and collect money that allow your ridiculous religious beliefs to have any hint of reality or believability. Magical, folks. Truly magical.
No, Jism. It's the prestidigitators such as yourself that makes videos simply to pull the veil over the audience's eyes in your best attempt at concealing the scientific truth, all because it doesn't match your belief system. Well, sorry, Jism, but science doesn't give a fuck about a butthurt flat earth idiot who scams his audience for money.
They haven't observed a black hole any more than I have observed a lion in Narnia. So take your peer review, your biased witnesses and experts, and go try to find some other new recruits because it stopped working on me just a few years ago.
And you've been a fucking idiot ever since. But I would like to point out something here. If this was all faked, Jism should be able to prove it. Instead, he just compares the black hole to a nar-hole, something he obviously made up to compensate for his lack of evidence and severe lack of intellect. Jism, you're a fucking idiot. Now, I'd like to take the time out to thank Jism, probably the most successful scammer in all of Flat Earth Narnia. Jism, you're a fucking idiot. Wow, now that was a ride. Let me first say thank you to Godless Engineer for collaborating with me on this video. And if you haven't subscribed to Godless Engineer, you should do so right now. I'll let him take us out tonight. But before I do, I want to say thank you to all of my channel members and patrons whose support helps me continue doing what I love. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. I'm Father Skeptic, and over to you, GE.
Thanks, Team Skeptic, for allowing me to come on and rip Jism a new one. I hope you heathens will subscribe to Team Skeptic over here, as well as come on over to Godless Engineer and subscribe to my ass. See you later, heathens. Don't forget to stand up and use your voice.